and the greatest hits that you're going to play over and over again in your head. They're going to shape your life on a daily basis. And so last week, first greatest hit was Proverbs 3, 5 through 6, which we don't even need to put on the screen because you've hidden it away in your heart, right? You've memorized it. You've got this down. Trust in the Lord with all your... Yeah, some of you really hid that away in your heart. Anyway, lean not on your own... Yes, in all your ways, submit or acknowledge, different translations. We'll give you a pass on that. And He will direct your path, ways. Yes, bingo, close enough. We'll take it. Here's what I want to say about that verse before we move on today. If you were here last week and you listened to that message and you didn't go home and memorize that passage of Scripture, if you didn't take that and hide it away in your heart and make that a big part of your life, you are not allowed to ask me for advice, okay? Do not ask me for advice if you didn't take that away. Because if you ask, I don't care what's going on in your life, I'm going to turn to you and I'm going to repackage in some way or the other Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And I'm just going to just tell you to trust the Lord. So really, these verses are everything. And if you don't hide these away, if you don't listen to these, don't memorize these, then you got to ask yourself the deeper question. Are you really interested in what God has to tell you? Okay? Didn't mean to start with a zinger today. But anyway, that's Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Today's greatest hits is James chapter 1, 2 through 4. It goes like this. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This is a verse, again, that you not only want to own, but you want to have this, and you're going to tell yourself this verse over and over and over again. And if you will put your faith in it and believe it and adopt this attitude here, your entire perspective in life will change. Here's what's so great about this verse. There's two different attitudes you can have in life. You can have the attitude that everything bad happens in your life is random, and it's difficult, and it's inconvenient. You can have the attitude that it's all just sort of random, and everything that you endure in life is completely random, and there's really no purpose for it. And at the end of the day, if you view it that way, you will have no choice as those difficulties begin to pile up. You will have no choice but to become a victim. Constant victim. Something random and bad and inconvenient and difficult is always happening to me, and I just wish that I could live in a world where it wasn't so difficult, and it wasn't so random, and it wasn't so inconvenient. And you will be a victim, and on top of that, you will eventually become a whiner. And I mean, a top-of-the-world whiner. Everything that's happening in your life will just begin to have an attitude I don't understand why this is happening to me. I don't understand why I don't have a great marriage. I don't understand why my life isn't the way I want to be. It's just stuff. That's what you become, because it's just all this terrible stuff, and you're the victim, and it just keeps landing on top of you. That's one attitude that you can have. On the other hand, if you have the attitude that James is telling us here in the book of James, if you have the attitude that God wants you to have, if your perspective is that every difficulty that you face, everything that comes your way, is an opportunity to grow in your faith and grow in your understanding of who God is, that this is God's plan to take you one step closer to Him and to put to death some very sinful, very selfish attitudes in your life, to put to death your lack of faith, to put to death the things that are destroying you the most. If you view these difficulties, these trials, as an opportunity, then that will change your perspective on everything. And on top of it, here's what you'll be able to anticipate them. You'll be able to look for these difficulties and understand that this is part of God's development process for you. And you'll see things completely. That will change your perspective in life completely. So, I want you to own this verse. I want you to memorize it. I want to hide away in your heart. I want you to live and guide your life through it. So, James chapter 1, verse 2, let's break this verse down. He starts with, consider it pure joy. Now, we have to decide whether he means this as a joke or not. right? You have to look at this, because I have heard this quoted more times sarcastically than I have seriously, right? Something bad going on, and we're like, oh, I guess we'll just consider it pure joy that the car broke down, that our furnace is broken, right? I've heard this quoted more times sarcastically than actually seriously, and we have to decide, does he really mean that? Does he really mean that we can get to a place in our faith where we can view difficulty as something we're actually excited about? I think he really means it, because it's not just James. It's other places in Scripture. I'll give you a couple examples. I love Acts chapter 5. In the beginning of the book of Acts, the apostles are going around teaching the gospel message for the first time. And they're teaching people that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He rose from the dead. He died. He died and he rose from the dead. That's the order they would teach that in. Just to be super clear. So they were going around teaching people about the resurrection of Christ, and people were believing like crazy. This movement was beginning to form, and that was a threat to the Jewish ruling council who had control over much of the Jews. So they brought them in. The name of the group was the Sanhedrin. That just sounds scary, right? You don't want to get in trouble by the Sanhedrin. So they brought in the apostles, and right in front of them, they decided what they should do with them. They're like, should we kill them? Should we stick them in prison? Like, what are we going to do? And they made the decision to flog them. Now, this is not just a beating that you have to rub Neosporin on for a week, okay? This is severe. Sometimes people would die when they were flogged. The apostles were literally beat within an inch of their life, and they were sent away. And they were all walking together, I'm sure, holding each other up as sore and whipped as they could be. Here's their response, Acts chapter 5. The apostles left the Sanhedrin, rejoicing, because they had been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. Day after day in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah. They were excited about it. They were happy that they endured this difficulty. They came through. Their faith was tested. On the other side, they ended up in a good spot, and they praised God for it. Not just James, who's telling us to consider it pure joy. Later on in the book of Acts, a similar situation, Paul and Silas were thrown in prison. They were thrown in prison. They're in a jail cell, and they were in stocks. So they're sitting there literally in chains. And about midnight, it says that they began to do this. It says about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. Now this isn't, they're just singing. I'm sure a lot of people sing in prison, right? They're not doing that. They're not like, sweet, low, sweet. That's not what they're singing. They're singing praises and hymns to God. And the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken at once. All the prison doors flew open, and everyone's chains came loose. So here they are in jail, undergoing adversity, difficulty, and they were praising God. Book of Romans, Paul tells us this. He says, we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials. He's not saying this is a joke. We can rejoice when we face these trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance. And endurance develops strength of character. And character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. And this hope will not lead to disappointment. In other words, he's saying, the more you put your faith in this, the more you endure, the more difficulties you go through, the more your hope is going to grow. And the more you put your hope in Jesus, the more I can promise you that this hope is not going to disappoint. Anybody ever put your hope in something that was a huge disappointment? Just, I don't know, just picking a random thing here. How about the Lions? Anybody put their hope in? Anybody put their hope in something that just completely disappoints them? He's saying, man, this one, this isn't going to disappoint. This isn't like that hope you had in your friend, or that hope you had in your parent, or that hope you had in that person, or that hope you had in the company, or that hope you had in the church. This is a hope. This is in Jesus Christ himself, and this hope will not disappoint. And the more you put your hope in there, the better it is for you. So James chapter 1, verse 2, when he says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of any kinds, I think he's serious. I think he's saying you need to grow in your faith to a point where you view every difficulty in your life as this grand opportunity to become like Jesus. And there's really no other way to get there. He says, consider pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith, I want to hit pause right there. I want to pull the needle off the record for a minute. I want to hit pause right there and just go, wait a minute. He said the testing of your faith. That's important. And I remind people over and over again, your faith is being tested. Whether you realize it or not, your faith is being tested. Your faith is being tested by God. Your faith is being tested by the people around you, by the world around you, by the people who are watching you. Your faith is constantly under a test. And the only way to test something is to push it to its limits. About a little over a year ago, I was having chest pains. And they were pretty intense chest pains, and I'd never had anything like this before. So I was getting kind of worried because, I eat terrible and I never exercise. So it seemed like I was having some heart problems, right? So my bad chest pains. Turns out later we found out it's just heartburn. And if you wake up in the morning and eat sausage and bacon and you have tacos for lunch and pizza for supper, you're going to have heartburn when you're 40. This is new for me. Anyway, so that's what it turned out to be. But anyway, I thought I was on the verge of a heart attack. So I go to my doctor, and the doctor was like, well, I don't know what it is, but just to be safe, I need to put you overnight for surveillance, and they need to put you through a stress test. So he sent me to the hospital that night immediately, went and packed a bag, went to the hospital. Now, most people that are in the heart area, heart ward or whatever at the hospital, they have had a heart attack, or there's some serious reason why they're there. And so I showed up, and I just kind of walked in and sat down on the bed, and they're like, well, the doctor said you can eat. Would you like to order some supper? And I'm like, yeah. I don't know, cheeseburger and fries, Probably the only one in the heart ward to order a cheeseburger and fries. I think I might be having a heart attack, that's what I ate. Anyway, they bring me in, and then they put me through a stress test. So how many people have been through a stress test? These are a lot of fun. I went through the chemical one. That's fun. Not the one where you run on the treadmill, but they're like, okay, so we're going to inject you with this chemical, and you're going to feel like you just ran up 3 flights of stairs. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if I've ever run up 3 flights of stairs. This will be a whole new experience for me. Anyway, so they injected me with this, and all of a sudden I was like I was completely out of breath, and I'm like, I've never worked this hard in my life, right? And they pushed my heart. That's what they were doing. They were pushing my heart to its absolute limits, and then they ran the diagnostics and the tests. Okay, so all the testing has been done. They come down, they sit with my wife and I, and the doctor came back and he said, your test came back really good. Like, you've got a really low resting heart rate, and you don't have high blood pressure, and your cholesterol is good. Are you guys shocked by this? I was shocked by it. And they came back and they were like, yeah. And so then the specialist came in. Now, he's a Chinese doctor, and this was a funny thing. So he walks in, he sits down with my wife and I, and he's like, well, 2 possibilities. Number 1, you have strong heart like athlete. Or 2, test wrong. And I looked at my wife, and I could tell in her eyes she knew which one it was, right? And I looked back at the doctor, and I was like, what do you think? And he was like, test wrong. And, he didn't quite sound like Mr. Miyagi, but anyway, it was a lot like that. And so we were like, okay, well, go run the numbers again, or whatever you're going to do. So he went and inspected everything, and he went and talked to my other doctor, and my other doctor came back and said, no, the test was right. It's conclusive. You don't have any problem. In fact, you've got a really healthy heart. And I walked out, my wife and I walked out there going, wow, it's really shocking. Like, I was really surprised by that. But that's what we have to do. That's what God does in our life. He tests us to see where we're at. He tests our heart, and he pushes it to its limit. And he's going to put us in places, he's going to put us in situations that are difficult. And it would be really great if we could live out our faith without difficulty. If we could grow in our relationship with him without difficulty, but it doesn't work. If you all of a sudden were transmitted to an island in the Bahamas where nobody else was around and all you had was a Bible, your relationship with God, it wouldn't grow. Your faith wouldn't grow. being isolated and alone with God, with just your Bible and nothing to do but pray. I mean, it'd be good for you, but your faith wouldn't grow. It is impossible to grow closer to God without the testing of your faith. So that's what God does. He comes and he tests our faith. He pushes it to its limit. He wants to know what we're capable of. And most importantly, he wants us to see. He wants us to know where our faith is at. So, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. As your faith is tested, as it grows, as you're pushed to the limits, you develop a deeper faith. You develop a deeper character. You develop perseverance. And your faith only becomes stronger because of that. And this is so important. Like right now, we're in the middle of doing something with moving from this location to the other location, as Keith mentioned. There's a gap here. And there's a lot of gaps. Like we really want to make sure we're in by the end of the year. We've got to pay taxes on the building for the whole year, which is a lot of money. There's a lot of things that are going on with this building. One of the things is in the money needed, that, like we've sat down in a couple meetings and we're like, oh, we're only $200,000 short. We're like, oh yeah, isn't that kind of a big number, right? Like, I'm not a very smart man, but 200,000 sounds like a lot of money. But I'm also not stressed about it because this isn't my first rodeo, right? Like God has led me through this process over and over again. The first church I was at in Oklahoma, our building campaign to move from a location we were at to a better location was $20,000. It was a small church, and it wasn't a very big number. 20,000, no big deal, but that stressed me out. That seemed like, I was like, how in the world are we going to raise $20,000 to be able to move from one location to the other? And actually, as we got into the project, it ended up being more like $30,000 or $40,000 to move in the location. The number kept growing, and my reaction to that was stress. My reaction to that was anxiety. My reaction to that was that somehow by working long hours and doing stuff all the time, that I was going to somehow reduce that number. And my stress led me to do that. And then God worked miracles. He showed up in huge ways that had nothing to do with me. One of the things that happened is we got to a place where our church had 37 cents in the checking account. That's not my checking account, that's the church's checking account. My checking account had 20 cents in it, but the church had 37 cents in the checking account, and really all we needed to move into the location and get our occupancy permit was we needed these solid core doors. Turns out they won't let you meet in a church unless you have doors. So we had to get these doors, but we didn't have enough money to buy the thousands of dollars worth of doors that we needed. And one of the guys worked at a home improvement store, kind of like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. And that week, a whole bunch of doors fell off a truck somewhere in Oklahoma. And they were going to throw them all away because they were damaged, and they donated them all to the church. And we put these damaged doors, and we were able to move in. And because of that, I went, man, God showed up. I stepped back. We persevered. We continued to put our faith in God, continue to grow. And God has led me through that process since that day over, to the point where we're like, yeah, we're $200,000 short. Whatever. That's not, my job isn't to close that gap. My job is to trust in God, to believe in Him, to do everything that He has called me to do, to be faithful and obedient to that, and to know that He's not just growing my faith, He's growing our faith. The reason God didn't just write us a check, the reason nobody's won the lottery in the last 6 months, is because God wants us to go through these trials. He wants to test our faith, and He wants to see whether we will be obedient to Him or not. As we grow in our faith, as we persevere, we grow in perseverance. Now, the next line is important. The next line goes like this. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. The only path to maturity, right? The only path to being complete, not lacking anything, to having a strong faith, to being like Christ, to doing all the things that God's called us to do, is difficulty, is to endure difficulty and have our faith tested and to persevere through it. Several years ago when I memorized this passage, I memorized it in the older NIV version. This is how I memorized it. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. There is no other path. There is no other way. And yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great if we could just have an easy life and not grow and continue to grow up, but it doesn't work like that. And when you think about it, there's never a moment that you've had in your life where you grew that didn't have something to do with difficulty, that didn't have something to do with adversity. The reason that you listened to the advice that you listened to, the reason that you grew in your wisdom, the reason you grew up is because you endured something. I recognize this in my life. I also recognize it in my kids' life. I think, this is just my opinion, maybe I'm getting old and grumpy, but I feel like parents are getting weaker. Weaker, I mean just weaker and weaker, where we feel like as parents, especially in my generation, like the goal is to somehow keep our kids from experiencing bad stuff. That's our objective. If that's your objective as a parent, just don't have kids, okay? Don't sell the ones you got, whatever you got to do. They're in better hands somewhere else. But anyway, we think that we can never sell your children. I guess I have to put a disclaimer there. But we think that that's the job. Man, if we're going to show love to our kids by keeping them from going through things that are difficult, that's just not the way life works. The only way you mature, the only way you grow is through difficulty. And so that's why in my kids' life, yeah, I want them to have teachers that they like. I want them to have teachers that they respect and enjoy learning from, but I want them to have horrible teachers too. I want them to have that teacher where they come home and are like, I don't like my math teacher, and my math teacher doesn't like me, and none of the kids in the class like the math teacher, and the math teacher's mean to me. And I'm going to be good. Now you're living. See? I want you to experience what it's like, because that's life, right? You need to learn that lesson early on, because guess what? You're going to have a boss, and unless you become your own boss for the rest of your life, you're probably going to have a boss that you don't like. Well, who gives a flip who you like as your boss, right? That lesson needs to be learned. I love and want my kids to experience all kinds of really good things, but I want them to face difficulty over and over and over. I want them to get jobs, and I kind of want their jobs to stink. I know that sounds terrible, but I want them to have a job that they absolutely hate right out of the gate. One of my biggest disappointments was my son's first job was like fun. I mean, it was like, it was easy. It was a nice job. Like, I was like, oh, that's too bad, right? I wanted him to have something that he hated. Don't you, and as a parent, man, we want our kids to face adversity because that's the only way you grow. That's the only way you mature. The people in this world who don't grow and don't mature have had things handed to them. They've had somebody out there who is enabling them. This isn't very hard to see in other people's lives. But in our lives, what do we want God to do? We want God to enable us. We want God to bail us out. We want to make stupid decisions, and we want God to get us out of them. And God looks at us and goes, no, I want you to go through some stuff. And I want you to experience my grace and my love and my forgiveness and my goodness and my joy and my peace. I want you to experience that stuff. But I also want you to go through some crap. And I want you to dig down deep, and I want your faith to endure. I want you to persevere, and I want you to be closer to me on the other side. It's important that you catch this. I'm not just talking about going through difficult stuff, because we've all been through difficult stuff. I'm talking about now that you have faith. Right? You've been through difficult stuff in your life, and it was difficult, sure. But now you have faith in Christ. Now you're following after God. Now you're believing in Him. Now, those difficulties really count. It helped develop you before, but now that you have faith in Christ and you're trying to follow after Him, these difficulties, they really matter because you're growing closer and closer to Him. I'm going to pray for you, and I've got to be honest with you. Here's what I'm praying. I'm praying that you're going to go through some difficulty. I know, right? It's terrible. You're just like, well, don't pray for me, right? No thank you. I'm going to do it anyway because I love you. And really, as I pray for this, we need to recognize that, we have an opportunity. Maybe you're already going through a difficulty. Maybe you're going to face something this week. Recognize that this is an opportunity to grow in your faith with Christ. Let me pray.